Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to As I Live and Grieve. Today we have two guests. Yes, it's like a BOGO. You know, you bring one, you get one. We have two guests today, and we're going to talk about a very intriguing perspective on grief. To me, it's the shamanic perspective on grief. And joining me today is Patricia Jones and John Moir. So hello and welcome to both of you.
Hello.
Patricia, would you start and just give our listeners a little bit of your background, please? And then I'll ask John to follow that.
Yes, I would be happy to. And thank you so much, Kathy, for having us on your podcast. We're very, very excited to be here. I am a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist for many, many years, 33 years to be exact. And I've, for many years, specialized in working with children and teenagers and families. And now I have a private practice in East Aurora, New York, where I also see adults for therapy. What led me to this journey on providing services related to grief, really, as I look back, has a lot to do with my own grief journey. And sometimes in life, things happen, you don't anticipate where it's going to lead you in life. You think you're going to go one way, but you actually, it's like the universe has something different in store for you and keeps nudging you along on a different path that you didn't even know existed.
Very true.
Yeah, but tragically, right at the time that my graduate studies career began, I had made a firm decision that I wanted to have my whole professional life focus on being a psychotherapist. At that juncture in my life, my sister, who was just a year and a half older than I, chose to end her own life in a very tragic, sudden way. And it launched me into this world of such grief that I never even knew existed. And when I think back to that time, even as I'm talking about it, I still get so emotional about it because that type of grief never ends. And I feel that our grief journey, there's really no beginning because it begins the moment you come into the world, and there really is no ending to grief. And there's times of grief that are just so intense that as humans, we have to learn how to manage that. So at the age of 27, I was thrown into graduate studies, doing internships, practicing being a therapist, and having the most intense grief of my life. Mm-hmm. And when I look back at that, at the time I did not recognize, I think I was almost too young and too much shock to recognize how that would shape not only my career, but how it shaped me as a person. And over many twists and turns, my grief brought me to the shamanic path. And now it's bringing me to Soulful Sorrows and being able to really focus on working with people in the context of workshops and grief.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. How about you, John? A little bit of your background.
Well, keep it short, and Patricia did a really nice job. I became a paramedic in 1979, and and I just retired 2018, I think. It was probably one of the best job I've ever done. I've always said I never worked a day in my life. So you leave one family and you join another family for your shifts. It's a major, for me, it was a major honing stone that just made me such a better person, going to other people's homes and seeing their stories unfold, whatever it may be. Some of it's very tragic, other times domestics and so on. And we do a lot of work in the homes trying to resuscitate people. And I really kind of it's kind of a dark way to say it, but enjoyed when we weren't successful to go and speak to them about this loss. It's an important part of the job that I really enjoyed. Anyways, my grief story kind of started as a child. I'm not going to go through a lot of it, but I'll express some of it as we go through some of the podcast with you. Anyways, my big grief, unlike Patricia's, was the loss of my former wife and the mother of my children suddenly in a car accident. That throws you into that really deep grief. Weller calls it a rough initiation, and where the bottom just drops out, and it's very otherworldly experience. And as we'll explain some more later, just about how it's sort of like when our loved ones pass, as their last gift to us is our grief.
Yeah, it will be interesting if I make it through this 30 minutes without crying. I usually listen to audiobooks, because I'm in the car a lot, and it just works for me. And I'm listening to Weller's book right now. So what you just said really struck a chord with me. And for me, it's a very new perspective on grief. And I've also, in a little bit of the research that I've done, the shamanic perspective seems to be kind of like grief is the gift that's going to bridge you from this loss to your new life, whatever shape that takes. I lost my husband a little over 4 years ago now. He had glioblastoma, which is a very aggressive form of cancer. I was his caretaker for 8 months. So I went through that anticipatory grief and very naively assumed, okay, I'm getting all my grieving over now. And then after he died, I said, wait a minute, what about all those 8 months? Because I was just really thrown into this pit. And it just was very difficult. Now, I kind of feel like I have healed a lot, and I have kind of come out of that. I've redefined my life, and I'm doing things that make me happy. Does that mean I have recovered from grief? No. Grief is still a very big part of my daily life. But I love this concept that grief is a gift. So I want to kind of pursue that a little bit. The shamanic perspective, well, first let me start with the very basics. Is shamanism a religion? Is it a practice, or is it a belief?
I'll take this one, I guess. It's not a religion in any way. It's a spiritual process. Archaeologists tell us it's been around for over 40,000 years. The shamanism that we've learned was inspired through Michael Harner, who was an archaeologist or anthropologist, I should say, and he started the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, and so it reconstituted all the common practices that he discovered around the world that was very similar, and brought it down to just what we call core principles. So it's like a knowledge system in a sense.
Okay.
You're learning all the skills to connect with the spirit world, and it's the spirits who do the healing. We just act as what they say, like a hollow bone to bring this realm into the non-ordinary realm.
Thank you. And I have read, again, I do a little bit of research here and there. So without quoting sources, I read a paragraph that mentioned that your soul is in pieces, which was it just kind of blew my mind when I thought, wait a minute, I always think of my soul as one entity. And, I keep thinking, all right, my soul is okay, all is well with my soul, and certain things resonate. But is that correct, that in shamanism, the belief is that your soul is in pieces, and you can recover pieces at a time as you heal?
Yeah, Kathy, you're asking such astute questions. Thank you so much. It gives us the opportunity to explain what shamanism really, really is. So from the shamanic worldview, the belief is that when we're born, our soul is intact, but that everybody goes through such trauma and loss in their life. And even just like fright, just like instantaneous, maybe you're in a car accident, you have that fright that comes upon you, everything's okay, but you're still impacted by that. And during these times, as a way for our soul to keep itself protected, there's portions of our soul that will flee. in response to trauma and loss and fright and things that aren't consistent with your soul's energetic field. So one of the things that a shamanic practitioner is able to do in an indigenous villages, people that practice shamanism day in and day out, they do this at the very beginning for people in the village, that when there's something traumatic that might happen to a village member, the next day they're seeing the shaman having what's called a soul retrieval, where the shaman can become altered and journey into the spirit world to gain help in finding that soul portion, and when it's ready to be able to help return it and have it be intact with the rest of the person's soul. So in that way, the trauma then becomes minimized and doesn't then take on a life of its own that might follow that person like it does in our society. Like trauma tends to follow people for the rest of their lives because nothing is, it's really not attended to in that type of very all-encompassing way.
Okay. I really like this concept. John, you have something you want to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Patricia said, is that with each fragment that we lose, like this part of the soul, it also we lose our life essence, that vitality. And I think this is what helps to create that sense of amnesia. What was the other one? Yeah.
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia. Yeah, thank you. Yes, when they unattend, but they don't attend to their grief, it just keeps piling up, and they're just always in a terrible place, right? They just see the world as a very dark place.
Right. And a phrase that he used in his book, the anesthesia, I thought, yeah, because you do feel numb. Yet sometimes you just want to hang on to that numbness because you don't want to feel. You just don't want to. The whole concept of soul pieces, I love. I love this because instead of feeling sometimes when you go through a loss, now I can think, I'm not losing my entire soul. I'm just losing a piece of it, a fragment of it. So, Patricia, you mentioned a process or a ritual, I think you said, to go through to retrieve those pieces. Do those need to be done by a shamanic practitioner with you, or is it something that a person can learn to do so that in future times they can help themselves?
Oh, yeah, that's another wonderful question. Typically, a shamanic practitioner would do the work for the person. However, if you set out to become, trained in being able to do shamanic work, you can definitely do so much of your own shamanic healing. And I would say the majority of people set out on the shamanic path really for their own personal healing, as opposed to being able to heal others. But being able to also promote healing for others is another thing that is a wonderful way of going about it.
And to dispel in our listeners maybe some images that may be forming in their mind, when I initially think about the word shamanic and break it down to shaman, my mind goes to Hollywood. It goes to movies. It goes to Indian villages and tribal rituals and everything like that. And even sometimes is referred to as a witch doctor. Please destroy that image for me by telling me what maybe do some of these rituals look like? What parts, what treatments, what therapies, what modalities might be included in a modern day shamanic ritual?
John, I'll let you take this one, but I guess I just want to say one thing before you do. When you think about the term witch doctor, if you translate that into something really, really positive, then you won't have such a negative view, because people will call me witches all the time. And I take it as a compliment. And so many people who are from other parts of the world who will come to see me for shamanic healing sessions, they'll say, "Oh, you're such a witch." And I mean it with the utmost respect, compliment. So now I just have a totally connotation of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, there are green witches as opposed to black witches, I discovered, but the general knowledge does not go that way. So thanks for that. John, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, like just, people are I've heard referred to as medicine women, medicine men.
Right.
I've heard sorcerers, all sorts of different names. Even shaman is kind of a. It's not every medicine person traditionally was called a shaman. That's a name that came from northern Russia. It just means one who sees in the dark. So that's because the shaman would go into a long catatonic state for until he got the information or she got the information and would bring it back. But there's, I think, in the history of some of the readings I've done, it's more often been a woman than a man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so the matriarchal societies back in the day, a lot would have been the medicine women or the plant herbalists.
Okay.
You know, they'd be out collecting the different
Right.
medicines that then they would give to members of their community.
Okay.
But the rituals themselves, there's not like a lot to see. There's not a lot of fireworks. It's very quiet. It's very intimate.
Okay.
Is the word I'm thinking of. And typically what we do for any kind of work when we first began, even in our workshops, is you form a sacred space, a sacred circle. And there's some different aspects of that is common to shaman, like the smudging.
Mm-hmm.
The church got it from somewhere, and they probably adapted it from those early shamanic practices and in the small communities. And we use rattles, we use medicine drums, and we typically call in our benevolent and loving, helping spirits to be present. We'll call in our ancestrals. Energy to be with us, and typically you don't see a lot, but you will feel something change in the room. There's not a heaviness. You just feel different. You feel. For me, sometimes I get a little weepy, or I feel a lot of joy. It's a quite a neat experience. And the people who go through that will tell you that that's shared pretty much common. Anybody that's been in the room where a shamanic healing is taking place. You just may be held so lovingly by an ancestral spirit that you just feel that you're home.
Yeah. And the rituals that are used are really intended to connect with the spirit world. And that's why the sage burning or the sweetgrass burning or the drum, the sacred drum, is used to call in spirits. Spirits are very attracted to these methods, so that shamanic practitioners and in our workshops, we do this so that then, and we make it very clear that we're asking for the compassionate, benevolent ancestor guides, spirit guides, power animals to come and join us, to be here to witness and help with the healing of the circle. And it's indescribable, like John was saying, how that energy shifts not only in the room, but amongst everybody in the room. It becomes so palpable in terms of the connection immediate that people begin forming with one another, and the circle becomes a very special sacred space of healing. And there's no denying that when you're in that room, and you can feel that.
Can these soul retrieval processes be done one-on-one, say with someone like you, Patricia, or you, John, one-on-one with someone to guide you, someone who is knowing of the process and everything? For example, if I were to say, I'm not comfortable in a group, but can you help me?
Yes, absolutely. No, our shamanic healing sessions that we do one-on-one are separate from our workshops. So in our workshops, we we act as shamanic practitioners, but we're conducting a soulful grief healing workshop that uses a lot of different methods in which to promote the healing, but it's not a shamanic healing session that we would do with just one person. And sometimes one person will come for the healing, but they want support of their family, so they'll bring their family along. But typically it's just a shamanic practitioner and one person to do those specific healings for that specific person's issues.
And because we have listeners around the world, John, can these sessions be done virtually?
Oh, they do. And there's a lot of the foundation teaches shamanic skills over Zoom, for example.
Really?
You still have two senses, right? So you have hearing and you have your vision, and you can participate in a circle and receive healing that way. I love doing depossessions, and it's such a wonderful way to connect with people, and it works so clearly. But yeah, so it's works anywhere.
Did you say depossessions?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's removing energy that just doesn't belong to the individual.
Okay.
And that energy comes from typically other humans. And there's a long story to it. When people pass, some just don't cross over and continue on with their journey to their destiny. And so these are incarnate spirits. They need to go somewhere because they're like in a void. So they have to attach to something. It might be a rock, a house, certainly to a person. Sometimes these entities will provide an influence on an individual. So if you are a smoker who likes an occasional cigarette, and this entity was a big smoker in their lifetime, then that influence might be all of a sudden that person starts smoking a lot more, but they don't really know why.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that opens up a whole nother realm of questions for me. How would somebody know that they need this ritual?
Typically what happens, Kathy, is that somebody wants an individual healing, is that they get in contact with any person who has a shamanic practice. And typically we do diagnostic journeys before we say, okay, let's talk in a couple of days or in next week kind of thing. And we'd do a journey to meet their spirits or our spirit guides.
Okay.
To see what they want done.
Oh, okay.
And then because it's not us that do the actual healing, as I said, but we manifest that healing, if that's the right word, to take place. So we have a foot in this door and a foot in the spirit world. It's remarkable work.
It's very complicated because the majority of people in our society aren't even aware of this idea that they could have a spirit entity attached to them, and they tend to just feel not themselves. They may end up going into depression. They feel really anxious. All of a sudden, they might have developed some sort of an addiction. And again, like in the shamanic world, people would be like, oh, I think I might have an attachment. I need to go see the shamanic practitioner. However, in our modern day society, right, we don't know any of this.
No, we don't. And we are always pointing our fingers elsewhere. So I must ask my toddler question. And I always say in every episode, I ask a toddler question because it is based in true innocence. Yet it's something I think everybody wants to know. Do these rituals hurt?
Oh, that's an awesome question. And thank you so much, because we wouldn't have thought to answer it otherwise. Absolutely no, not at all on any level, because there's, in terms of physical pain, obviously there's nothing that would promote physical pain through any of these practices. Sometimes in an individual shamanic session, there will be some touching, but it includes like maybe blowing power animal into somebody's head or into someone's abdomen, so nothing that would cause pain. there's a definite emotional process though. So it's very common that you would see the shaman in tears and also the client in tears. But that emotional process is more about healing than it is about provoking any type of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's my experience that once you deal with and allow those emotions to kind of come forth in your system, it's almost like a purging. And even though it's an emotional pain at the time, and sometimes it can feel like a physical pain as well, but once you get through that, it's been like been this clearing. So is that accurate? And I know, John, you had something you wanted to add.
See, the reason why Patricia and I found that this is shamanism and working with people with grief works so well is because it's the soul that is involved, and that's the level that we work on. And what I liked so much about Weller, he was the first person that I came across that spoke using terms that soulful language, the alchemy of the soul, and I really liked that. It resonated with me. And so it's not a healing per se that people, when you have your grief, especially the deep grief, it's a discovery of what your soul is trying to tell you, that it needs to express now this deep experience, a transformative experience of having a loved one pass so suddenly. And we're connected energetically, like like cords, attachments, all sorts of things go on, that the soul is just aching. It needs to express itself. And so what we try to do through our work is create a transformation within the individual by all of a sudden recognizing that it's not up here in the brain or in their head. It's all taking place in the heart. And so we have to work at a heart level to help people realize what the soul wants to do. It wants to live its purpose. It wants to live a big life, not a tiny life. And when we carry our grief around so much, it makes us small. When we don't share our grief, it makes us small. And it doesn't give other people the opportunity to learn about their own grief. They live small lives. And so that the heart just needs to get this big expression out, and through shamanic practices and to get their power back, because they've had this big soul loss. So they lost some of their life essence as well. So we looked at it that we want to bring this power back to them, and then take them through some steps so they can recognize that it is a very soulful journey that they're on, to rediscover what is really waiting for them. And that's why we think that grief really is, it's a gift. Now, we would like to try and see it transformed from this big, deep experience by teaching people how to tend to their grief in a healthy way, and then slowly move it from this deep pain, because now they're getting their power back, into like just a lovely melancholy kind of thing. I certainly don't want to get rid of that, because it reminds me of a love that I had that was very important. But for some people, it may not be a person. It might be animals. It might be the planet or ancestral. It's not that people will heal from their grief, and nor do they just push through it. That's the pushing through means I'm just going to push it down into the deepest part, right?
Right. John, I love, love, love what you have just said. And I'm going to play it back numerous times, I can tell right now, because your words were so eloquent and told me just what I needed to hear today at this moment. So thank you for that. I fear that our time is up. And I'm definitely going to invite the two of you back, because I'm sure our listeners are going to want to know more. This is so intriguing to me. I'm going to continue to read Weller's book as well, so I'll probably have dozens more questions for the next time. But at this point, I want to, as we start to wrap up our session, I want to offer each of you a moment to speak directly to our listeners without my questions leading the way, and just let them know what you can offer them as far as services, as far as website, anything you want to tell them directly. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Thank you, Kathy. Our website is soulfulsorrows.com, and you can go on the website and you can schedule an individual shamanic service with either John or myself, or if you want the both of us, you can schedule that as well. And like we had said, we do those virtually at this point in time, so you can be anywhere and we can provide that for you. We have a workshop being planned that'll be happening again right here in East Aurora, New York. It's in Western New York. We don't have the date set at this point, but it'll be sometime in the fall. And we're also looking to schedule a fall workshop in the Greater Toronto area. And if you come on our website, again, soulfulsorrows.com, you can sign up for our newsletter and you'll get notices as to when and where those workshops will be.
Thank you. Your turn, John.
Yeah, on our website, we have 4 pillars that we kind of have formulated our workshops from. And it's grief resilient, shamanic wisdom, witnessing, and the cultivating reverence. And that's what we have a number of different exercises to help introduce those concepts to our workshop participants. And so we've had our first one. It really went well. We have a grief altar. People come and bring their whatever things of endearment that they have that place on the altar to help them focus. And then we have some rituals. We have some different ceremonies. What else? And then we have a like follow-up about a month later, like a Zoom session with everybody, just to see if they have any questions or they weren't looking for some clarity. And then we also are looking at expanding that now to have just grief circles once a month. That will be the fine when we get that launched. That'll be done by Zoom.
Very interesting. So many things to think of, and it prompts so many questions. So I encourage our listeners to take a second listen, because I think you're going to hear more the second time than you heard the first time. We talk about self-care all the time, and I can't think of a better way to take care of yourself than to do something about the pain you're feeling. And you might consider looking into their website, soulfulsorrows.com. That information will be in the show notes, in the episode notes, and it'll also be on our website. We will have their contact information. So everybody out there, there's absolutely no reason on this earth that you can't do something about the pain you're feeling. Consider that anesthesia for a little bit. That numbness, that's it. Consider Weller's book. There's just so much to discover in the shamanic perspectives of grief. So take care of yourselves, and we will catch you next week, I hope, as we all continue to live and grieve.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asilivengrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.